Greetings, people of the internet. Welcome back to the Underground Laboratory, where we create robots, alien zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. Now, you may be asking yourself, what would possess somebody to create these types of things? What is the methodology behind the madness? Well, the answer may surprise you, because one of my biggest inspirations isn't a mad scientist, an evil genius, a supervillain, or someone bent on world dominations, although you may argue that the person we're talking about got pretty close to taking over the world, and if his legacy is any indication, that may just happen. But we're not going to talk about that right now, because one of my biggest inspirations, actually an inspiration to a lot of artists. I would say you'd be hard-pressed to find an artist who wasn't inspired by this individual. So who are we talking about? Oh, come on, you know who we're talking about. Walt Disney, the man, the legend. And I've been a fan of Walt Disney ever since I can remember, obviously, and I wanted to dig deeper. I wanted to know more about the man. I wanted to get up close and see his work up close and personal. And there was one way to do that. Well, there's a lot of ways to do that, I guess, but one way in particular is something called the Walt Disney Family Museum that I've just been dying to go to. Now, of course, when you're millions of miles below the surface of the earth, that becomes a little difficult. So what we do is what we always do, is use the power of the invention that we created right here in Serkworks Labs, the paralleloscope, which allows us to view alternate realities, so we can go pretty much anywhere we want, and we're going to do that via the paralleloscope. We're going to go to the Walt Disney Family Museum. So join me. We are at the Presidio in San Francisco, California, home to the Walt Disney Family Museum. And what a museum it is. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed my experience just touring the building and checking out all these wonderful exhibits. What you're seeing right now when you first walk in is just this massive trophy case filled with so many of the achievements that Walt acquired over his career. Everything from, Golden Globes to Emmys to the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and of course Oscars. Now, Walt Disney holds the record for the number of Oscars won by an individual. I think 21 Oscars out of, I think, 59 nominations. And check out this one from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I thought that was pretty cool, with the big Oscar and then the 7 little ones. Now, as you go in, you kind of get a sense of Walt's family history from, his whole family tree. And as you can see here, these stories are presented in such a cool fashion, because you've got these interactive displays, these really cool animated things, talking about the story of Walt's life, and it's really cool how they put it together. Here we can see a lot of Walt's earliest cartoons, a lot of stuff that he would do for like school newspapers, and some of his patriotic cartoons and comic strips and things like that. Very interesting. Walt was definitely a patriot. When World War I started, he tried to sign up for the Army, but he was too young, so they rejected his application. And then I guess he forged his birth date, and he went and joined the Red Cross. And as we go on, we get to see a little bit of that. And right here we get to see, this is I don't know if this is the actual ambulance, probably not, but it's a replica of the ambulance that he drove when he was in the Red Cross, when he was in France. While in the Red Cross, Disney continued to draw cartoons. Many of them were published in the Army newspaper, and so when he got out, he was just primed to start a studio. So he partnered up and started Laugh-O-Gram Studio. And here you get to see some of the history of that short-lived studio, where really it was when he started to learn how to do animation. Now here you can see an old photostat machine. Now I kind of know a little. I used to work with one of these when I was in college, and it's pretty much a precursor to even almost like a Xerox machine, but it takes like these black and white photographs. That was a much older version, but I remember working on one of those. But here we can see some of his earliest cartoons and animations from Laugh-O-Gram Studio. Now, Laugh-O-Gram went bankrupt, and so Walt packed up everything he had and moved out to California, where he started the Disney Brothers, I think it was called at the time, him and his brother, and then of course turned into just Walt Disney Studios. Now here's the first projects they were working on. Actually, I believe he started working on these at Laugh-O-Gram, but finally he was able to sell them under the Walt Disney Company, and these are the Alice comedies, and which kind of mixed live action and animation. And as you can see, a lot of these, you can see some of the cameras here that they used to shoot those. But I think Walt really wanted to go on to just doing full animation, and that's when he created Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Now, unfortunately, he lost the copyright or the rights to Oswald, so he had to come up with a replacement, and that's where we got Mickey Mouse. And you can see some of the earliest drawings of Mickey Mouse right here, kind of him sketching out, and of course, the rest is history. Here's a picture of Mickey coming on the scene, and Oswald not too happy because not too many people remember Oswald. Now, this is probably the most amazing thing, at least for me, in the whole museum. This is probably the first known drawing of Mickey Mouse by Walt Disney, and you get up close and personal and get to see that. It's just so awesome. Now we go into Steamboat Willie, which was the first animated, I was going to say feature, but first animated cartoon with sound, and just a huge success. I mean, we've never seen anything like this where I can't speak to that because I wasn't around, but it was just really incredible, and that's kind of what, after which came Silly Symphonies, which brought sound up to a whole other level and everything. But here we just get to see all kinds of cool promotional things, and just the beginnings of Walt Disney animation. Really incredible stuff. So, and of course, what would Disney be without merchandise? And just a huge case of some very early licensed Disney products. Now, having worked with, I have never worked on Disney licensed stuff, but I worked on Looney Tunes and things like that, and I can tell you they're very much sticklers as far as getting the, capturing everything, getting it on model and stuff. And not so much I've noticed from some of these early things. Some of them were really like, is that Mickey Mouse? It's hard to tell. But all in all, pretty close. But they definitely didn't, and it could have just been they didn't have the wherewithal to get things right there. But original Mickey Mouse, I guess Mouse Club best. I remember watching stuff from the Mickey Mouse Club, just in reruns and things like that. So here again, like I said, we get into the Silly Symphonies where, full orchestra and everything, just taking that sound to the next level. And the skeleton dance, I think, is what you're seeing right here. Still in black and white, but as we move in here, we get to see some colors. Now, this is the old mill, which is the cartoon where they first started to use the multiplane camera, which kind of gives you that depth that you see in animated projects. And this was this was a breakthrough, in addition to the color angle, which you're seeing now. But that multiplane really added a whole nother aspect to animated storytelling, and really what gave Disney, it was kind of that precursor to what they created when they went on to Snow White. And here we get to see some of the other characters, some of Mickey Mouse's most famous friends. Of course, Minnie Mouse was introduced around this time, and we get to see, who else? We get to see Goofy, originally Dippy Dog. So Goofy, one of my personal favorites. I love Sport Goofy. That was one of my all-time favorite cartoons as a kid. And of course, Donald Duck and Pluto. And don't ask me I don't know why Pluto is more like a dog and Goofy's more like a human. That's kind of been debated and will be debated for the ages. But kind of cool to see some of the earliest sketches of all of the subsequent characters that came after Mickey Mouse. And here we go. We're into Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was really just a massive success, and a very very risky. I mean, not too many people believed that this could happen, to make a full-length feature animated movie. But so Disney pretty much banked everything they had and finally found, some financial backing to make it happen, and the rest is really history. I mean, it was just a massive success, but it's kind of cool to see how all this came together. Now, in this exhibit, there's a lot dedicated to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. with good reason. I mean, it's just a milestone in animation. I mean, here we get to see a little shot of Lord Kimball, one of the 9 old men, and that's what's really cool about this whole exhibit. There's a lot of interactive stuff you can pick up, and you can listen to stories from a lot of the animators, and it's just an amazing exhibit. And I didn't really have, I mean, I was there for probably 3-4 hours, and that was not enough time to spend. I wish I had more. And again, more merchandise this time from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. We get to see a lot of the dolls and the things that came along with it, which is, you know, really just a part of Disney, is the merchandising and everything. This is really cool. The Walt Disney Studio menu for the restaurant in the studio. I think it was like $1.50 for filet mignon. Now this here is really cool. It's just the chain of command and how the whole studio works. I was hoping that would be a print that I could find like in the gift shop, but I didn't see it. But it was really cool to see from Walt all the way down. Now here we get to see some shots of Bambi, and there's a really interesting story about how his daughter said, because his daughter was a fan of the Bambi book, and she was like, "Why did you have to kill Bambi's mother?" And Walt was like, "Well, that's the way it happened in the book." And she said, "Well, you changed so many things about your movies. Why couldn't you change that?" Which is true. I mean, you know that, you know, I always say kind of for the better. I think when Disney takes a property, whether it's a fairy tale or a story, they always add new things to it. Sometimes they kind of sweeten it up a little bit, but I think they really add so much to it. And again, the second animated movie, which was really superior to Snow White in so many ways that they were building, that's Pinocchio. And there was a whole exhibit dedicated to Pinocchio, which I wasn't allowed to film it. It was a separate exhibit, but you get to see some of the Pinocchio stuff here, and also a really cool, you know, shot of one of the animators' desk. Now this, of course, is that multiplane camera, and they have one here that you can see. Now we're at the top, the upstairs, the second story, and we're gonna go down, but as you can see, this glass window, and you can kind of pan down and you can see just how massive this multiplane camera was. And it's really interesting if you do some research on how it works with these just little plates, and as the camera would just go through the scene and just give it so much depth. And again, it's not without its problems. I mean, here we go into the whole labor dispute with the Walt Disney Company and the strikes and everything like that, and on to World War II, where Walt Disney kind of changed its focus and started, you know, working on, you know, things for the war effort and everything. We get to see a lot of it. We get to see Daffy Duck throwing a tomato at Hitler's face. I mean, I got to see Captain America punch Hitler in the face, but it's kind of cool to see Donald Duck doing that. And again, then we kind of move on to Walt Disney kind of made an excursion to Latin America, and they took sort of that inspiration and added that into some of his cartoons, like the Three Caballeros and things like that. This part was a really cool exhibit. You can see, and if you've ever been to Disneyland, you know they spare no expense on just making things really, you know, just amazing, the way they present things. And this was no exception, just the way everything was presented. Here we get some original Mary Blair paintings, and we saw some of these. There was a few in the collection of Guillermo del Toro that we saw in one of the previous videos that I did, but it's really cool to get to see these. Just amazing, you know. Now we're moving on to some of when Walt Disney started getting back into doing more live action, and we get to see, you know, 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, Robin Hood, all that. Now Walt was a big fan of miniatures. He collected miniatures, and that was one of his hobbies. He loved miniatures. And I think the whole idea of miniatures and creating these little worlds is what sparked the idea, one of the ideas that sparked the whole notion of Disneyland. But here we get to see some of his personal collection of some of his miniatures and things like that. Now we're walking down. We're going to start walking down to the downstairs, and as you can see, we come into this big open area, and this is just, I was just awestruck by this, because down below we get a whole map of Disneyland. This is Walt Disney's property where he lived. That was his home. Now along his property he had a scale model of the trains. He loved trains, and as you can see the little seat there, people could actually ride on this. It was kind of small, but people could actually ride on it, and it went around his property and everything. And this is the actual train that did run around his property. He had it there for I think 3 years, but there were some accidents and some incidents involving some of his guests. Here you can see him riding on that, and unfortunately he took it down after 3 years because there were just too many problems with it. But really cool to see that. There's a castle based on, the Sleeping Beauty, based on Sleeping Beauty. Now this is really, to me, this is the centerpiece of the whole exhibit. This huge, model of Walt Disney World, the way he envisioned it. Now I don't know if this is how he envisioned it, or if this was how it looked up until, his passing, or what. But a lot of the stuff I remember from as a kid, some of the stuff is gone now. There was, as you can see, the Autotopia. It looks pretty huge. There was actually two versions of it. I think there was an Autopia and a midget Autopia that kind of went through Fantasyland. Now there's just the one. But there's so many things that I remember. Like right down here, I don't know if you see where there's a little Indian village. Now that right there where that stands now is Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. But it looked like before there was a little railroad. I don't really remember that. That must have been closed off when I was a kid. But there's some stuff in there over adjacent to that. There's this little, I couldn't tell what it was. It was like a cutaway, and it looked kind of like a mine or something. But some of the stuff I do remember from when I was really young was the Journey Through Inner Space, which is where they shrink you down. And as a mad scientist, that was that was pretty cool. I mean, that was definitely an inspiration to me. The whole idea of shrinking somebody down and all that crazy science and everything. But that's Star Tours now, and then of course the Carousel of Progress, which is now Innovations, Innovations, but I think that's changing, and that's probably going to become something along with Tomorrowland. It's been a while since I've been back there. I really need to go back in that area, and we see one of the original Autopia cars, which is really cool. Kind of like this model a little better than the ones they have now. They're kind of cutesy, but it was really cool to see that. Then, of course, Disney got involved in television, and just this whole wall of television screens and everything. You get to see a lot of the programming that he's, kind of famous for. That here, the Wonderful World of Disney. Now, I don't know if I was watching these in reruns or if it was just a second version of it, but I definitely remember sitting down with the family and watching the Wonderful World of Disney on television, and now we get to see some of the animatronics and everything that made Disneyland, just here from the Hall of Presidents, and the story of Abe Lincoln, that animatronic, the House of the Future, pretty cool. I'm very into retro sci-fi stuff, and unfortunately all things have to kind of come to an end as you start to get towards the end of the museum. Then we unfortunately we get to the point where Walt has passed, and this is kind of moving in a way. We get this little television and radio set, which that's where a lot of people found out that Walt Disney had passed away, and just the outpouring of condolences and stuff, as you'll see as we kind of move out of the exhibit. But really touching to kind of hear the news, like the actual the broadcast that kind of one of the broadcasts that let people know of the end of just an amazing career, amazing man, and everything, and illustrated, of course, by all of these drawings that different artists did. Just so beloved and brought so much joy and everything to so many people, and continuously, I mean, his legacy lives on, and we'll get to see that as we kind of move on, because we do want to kind of leave on a positive note. So they've kind of structured it to, after Walt's passing, sort of what we're looking at now, which is sort of that vision of the future, and what inspired so many people, so many artists like myself. And there you go, that's the Walt Disney Family Museum part of it. There's just so much more to see, but yeah. Well, that about does it for our journey through the paralleloscope to visit the Walt Disney Family Museum. Now, if you happen to be out in the real world and you're near the San Francisco area or plan to be, I highly recommend that you check out this exhibit, because it's an amazing museum. There's so much more to see, way more than I was able to show you on this. In fact, I would love to go back myself, because there's a lot of stuff that I missed or I just didn't have the time to do. So go check it out. And so that's going to wrap up another episode. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys later. That is all.